going to cover various options for creating recurring events, or also called repeat events, and RSVP for events on your IndieCommerce website. In the webinar description, we had actually mentioned that there are 2 possible solutions for creating recurring events, but there are actually 4 different options. And we thought it is best to share all the 4 options. And each option has its own pros and cons, but what really matters is for you to decide which option will actually work for you and your store and your staff, and then use that one. And okay. So today we are going to be talking about certain terms like content types, fields, and display formats. So let's quickly go over what each of these terms mean. So a content type. So what is a content type? It's a particular kind of content. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a simpler definition than this. But when I think of content types on your IndieCommerce site, what occurs to me is I find a similarity between this and the contacts on my iPhone. So if you were to transfer all the contacts on your phone into your IndieCommerce site, you would start with creating a content type called contacts. And on your IndieCommerce site, there are different types of content types available. For example, the page, the book page, the event, blog, web forms, these are all some of the examples. And the next term that we will be talking about is a field. So what is a field? A field stores a particular bit of information. And a content type can have many such fields. For example, we are going to be talking about the event content type. So the event content type has some built-in fields like the title, body, event location, event data, image, etc. And how do you find the fields for any content type? You can go to structures, content types, then the name of the content type, and then manage fields, because each content type will come with its own set of fields. And each field will add a piece of information to the content type that it is attached to. And these fields can be marked as required or not. Like if you take the title of an event content type, that is required because every node needs a title, but the description is not required. And the type of data. So depending on the data that you want to save, it could be a text field, a text area, an image upload, or a date, etc. And each data type will have its own widget. It could be a select box, it could be a radio button, or for an event date, it could be a pop-up calendar. And the number of values that can be assigned to a particular content type can also vary. It can be just one value, or it could be multiple values. For example, again, if you look at the title field, it can have only one value. Whereas if you look at images, or in today's example, we're going to look at the event date, they can have multiple values. And the display format. Once the field has been entered, the data has been entered, how do you want to display it? So that can be controlled using the display format. So now let's jump into recurring events. When we talk about recurring events, so today we will focus mostly on the event content type and the event date, which is the field. So I said there are 4 different options for creating recurring events. So option number 1, which is pretty basic, is you create a new event every time you have to have that recurring event. For today's example, we will talk about a story time on Sundays. So you have story time happening on May 5th, May 12th, May 19th, etc. So for each one of those days, you have to create an individual event. And for each time, you will add the date, the description, the location, images, etc. for every instance. And once you create these, it'll automatically appear in your events calendar. And if you're using book lists for these, like not for a story time, if you're using it for a book club meeting, then each week you may have a different book. Then in this option, you can have different books with each instance of this repeat event. Now, the next option is cloning an event. A cloning means exact copy of one. So let's say I have an event for Sunday, May 5th. And I want to create another event for Sunday, May 12th. So I take the Sunday, May 5th event, and then I clone it, and then I edit it and use it for May 12th. The advantage here is I don't have to enter all the fields because the clone will automatically be filled with all the fields like the title, the description, the image, etc. But we have to be careful when we edit it. We have to make sure that we are editing the clone and not the original event. And once it's created, it'll appear on the regular events calendar. And if you're using book lists, then each instance can have its own set of books. And this is not readily available on all sites, but you can request it. So let's quickly take a look at what that clone looks like. So this is a sample site. And let's say I'm going to take one event. I have the cookbook club, and I want to clone this. So when you go to the event page, you have a link for clone content. So I click on the clone content. It creates, you can see here that it creates a clone of the book club event. So my first job here is to change the name. So I get rid of this clone, and then I say this was for June, so I want to create one for July. And the rest remains the same. You can either leave it the same or you can change it. Like if you want to upload a different image, you can upload it here. If you want to change the description, you can change it here. But at least you don't have to change all the content. You don't have to enter all the content. And here I come up here. So this one is for June. So this is important. I have to change the date to July. So let's say it's on July 7th. The time remains the same. And then I go ahead and then I save it. So now I have, let me look at the contents that I created. So this was the one that already existed. I cloned it and then I created a new event, which is for July. So this is the second option. Again, there are advantages, disadvantages, or pros and cons. It's just that every time you need to copy an event or create a repeat event, you have to clone it. And also make sure that you're editing the right event. Next, the third option here is creating a completely new content type. So we have the event content type, but we can go ahead and create a new content type called recurring events. And here we can make the date field for this recurring event be able to accept multiple values. And then I can go ahead and then create all these repeat events for 5th, for 12th, and for 19th. And today, I think Shanti will have some time to go over how to create and configure these. So now what are the important points about this option? So it is a new content type, and the date field can be configured. And you can see that in this case, the date field, the options will be similar to what you see on a Google Calendar. You can choose every Monday, every Tuesday, and those kind of options. But the disadvantage here is it will not appear on the default events calendar. The main reason being, since it's a different content type, the system does not think of it as an event. But in some cases, so for some stores, this actually helps because their calendar is already filled. They have a full calendar, and they don't want the Sunday story time to appear with the rest of the events. So it's okay for them if this does not show up on the default calendar. So they can just go ahead and create a new calendar if they want. And it does not appear on the upcoming events view if you have it. And if you are feeding events feed to different vendors outside, for example, if you're sending it to Shelf, then this will not appear in that. And the store staff, when they create a new event, they have to make sure that they are using the right content type, whether it's events or recurring events. And another drawback, which I think is a drawback, is one in this option, the time cannot be changed. Let's say you have the story time on Sunday at 10 a.m. If it is always at 10 a.m., then it's fine. But if you move the time around, then this option will not work. And again, if you're using book lists, then every instance of that event will have the same book in it. So this may not be a good option if you have a book associated with that event. Now, the fourth option, which is kind of the latest one that we added, is configuring the event date on your existing event content type. So this is the event content type. You take the event date. Right now, if you look at it, you can only accept one value, but you change it to unlimited, and now you're able to use it for multiple events. And in here, there are the one disadvantage is the interface. As Shanti will show this to you, the interface is not very fancy. You have a pop-up calendar to choose the date, but the time has to be typed in each time. But the advantage is once you create these, it'll automatically fill your default events calendar. It'll appear in the upcoming events view, and it will be included in the events feed for Shelf if you're using it, or for any other vendor. And the time can be different. Like the story time on this Sunday could be at 10, and the story time the next Sunday could be at 11, or it could alternate. So if you have something like that, then this would be a good option. And again, if you're using book lists, if you're using books associated with events, this may not work for you. So first we will walk through the steps for this option 4, where you're going to be editing the event field. So there are 3 steps involved here, just 3 steps. First, you edit the event date field, make it unlimited so that it can accept unlimited values. Then you create a new event with the multiple dates and time, or you can just go back and then edit an existing event and add multiple date and time. And then you check the event page. Make sure that the display looks right. If it is not, you may have to go in and edit the display settings for the event date field. Okay, now with this, I'm going to hand it over to Shanti so she can do the live demo. Just one second. Over to you, Shanti. Shanti, we can hear you. No, I'm sorry. I think you're muted. Let me, okay, there you go.
Oh, there you go. I know I didn't mute myself. Thank you, Geeta, for that wonderful overview. Okay, so as you have seen from the slideshow, Geeta has gone over an overview of some terms and definitions, as well as the methods available for adding recurring events to your IndieCommerce site. So now we are going to go over the actual process live on an IndieCommerce website. Right now I am on the home page of one of our sample sites, and I'm logged in as a store admin. Now to start, what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to edit an existing event date field in our content type to allow multiple dates for an event. So in order to do that, let's go to our manage fields for our event content type. To do that, hover over structure, content types. We find our event content type, and we can either click on it or we can go straight to manage fields. This will take us to the page, all the fields that exist for our event content type. As you can see, here are the labels of all the fields that exist. The field type, which is the type of data that can be stored in our field, and as Geeta had mentioned, this could be an image, and for our instance, it's a date. And she also mentioned the widget that it can have. It's a pop-up widget for our event date, but it could also be a select list, checkbox for other different types of fields that we may want on our event content type. So now we're going to find our event date field here. We're going to click on Edit, and we'll take into the event settings page, and we just have to scroll down a little. We don't have to make changes to anything else. We're looking for the event date field settings and the number of values. As you can see, the default is set to 1. What we want to do is we want to change that to unlimited. And then once we do that, all we have to do is go down and save our settings. Okay, so that is actually it, just editing the content type that you already have. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. And now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an event so that we can see how this new updated event date works. So I'm going to go to Content, Add Content, and I'm going to go to Event. I'm just going to name my event Story Time. We can call it Story Time and Sing Along. And I'm just going to update an image for that because I think it looks better with an image. So we're going to select our image, upload. You can enter something in here if you want to. Welcome to Story Time. That's the description of your event. And then here is what we're looking at and why we're here. We'll look at the event date. As you can see, it looks similar to what you're used to. You can either display the end date or not. We're going to choose not to display the end date. And if you click on the date field here, you'll see there's a pop-up box where you can choose a date. And let's say we want our event to happen every Friday. So I would choose Friday in the time field as well. If you click on the time field there, you get an option to choose the time. So we're going to keep it at 2:15 p.m. And then we're going to add more because we want it to happen every other Friday, let's just say. So I'm going to do that. And every other Friday, the next one will be the 17th. The next time I want this to happen at noon. And let's say we're going to just add a few just to fill this up a little bit. At 31st, and I'm going to go back to it being at 2:15. That's my original time that I always have this story time. And let's just add one more. So I'm going to go there. And the next one would be, let's say, I would say it's the 14th. And I'm going to 2:15 there. And the event address is going to be at the store. So that's the main store address. If there's a book attached to this event and I wanted to have people coming in the option to buy a book, I would just add one here. And I'm going to scroll all the way down and I'm just going to save it now. Okay, so it's showing all of our event dates that I've added. As you can see, the story time and sing along also shows up on the upcoming events view display here, and it will also show up on the main event calendar, as you can see here. And it's going to continue to show all the events that we added. These are repeat events that we just added. It automatically appears on the calendar. So now going back to the event page, let's say we don't want to display all of the event dates. So what are we going to do? We are going to manage the display for this content type. So we're going to go back to structure, content types. We're going to go back to our event page. And we're just going to click on event, but this time we want to manage the display. So we're going to click on that. As you can see, we're going to find our field, which is the event date field. And we're going to keep the label, the event date label there. We're going to keep the date and time, but we want to click on this gear here. And as you can see, you can choose how to display the date and the time. Let's say we want it to be a medium. We're going to keep both start and end dates if there are any. And we are going to only choose to show 2 of our events. And we want to put starting from now because as the events pass, we want it to disappear from the page. And when you add now, it will only show the events that are relevant to now and after. So I'm going to say update, and then I'm going to save it. So now we're going to go back to our page. Go back to content. And the first one that we have is our story time. And see, now you see only 2 events. And that is how you would control the display for your event. So this is the 4th option that Geeta spoke about. And we think it's the most versatile option because you can control the time and you can control the managed display. And it's the newest option that we are offering to stores for IndieCommerce sites at this time.
And the
So now
added, Shanti, the added bonus
yep.
here is that it gets added to the calendar automatically, no
Mhm.
extra work done, and it gets
Yep.
added to the upcoming events
Coming events.
also. Yeah. And also please note that since you are making a change to the event date on your event content type, every event will now have an option to add more dates, whether you want it or not, because you may have non-recurring events. Like in this example, you have the author event with Delia Owens. So that may not be a repeat event. So, but if you edit the event, you will still see options for repeating dates. So please note that it'll appear for all events, but you should only use it when there is a repeat event or recurring event.
Okay.
And once you have changed the field to unlimited, please do not change it back to 1. That way you lose some of the changes that you have made.
Right, all of the events that you have entered will disappear. I mean, the extra dates of the events will disappear if you change it back. Okay, so now I'm just going to briefly, Geeta, do I have time to briefly go over the?
Yes, you do. Let's show them how to do the new content type for recurring events.
Okay, great. So I've already created the content type actually, but we can go back and, for example, if you wanted to create a new content type, you would go to Structure, Content Types, Add Content Type, and I would just name it New Recurring Event. You can add a description if you want to, and I don't want this promoted to the front page or my information displayed, and I'll do Save. So creating a new content type is also fairly simple. As you can see, now it creates a general content type page here with basic fields. So the thing that we want to add is we want to add a new field for this particular content type. So we're going to call that store events date. And then we're going to pick the date format. And we're going to pick, for the widget, we're going to pick pop-up calendar. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to save. Store events dates already in use. Oops, excuse me. So let's do that. So that's the machine name that you see, and it has to be unique. And since I've already created a sample previously, it didn't allow me to use the same name. Okay, so the field settings here. This is the repeating date one, so I am going to select, I'm gonna select collect and end date because I want the option for that. And I'm going to select for repeating a date, I'm gonna select yes, and I'm gonna save my field settings. Okay, so now field settings set. As you can see, it will also select unlimited by default there. And now you have a repeating event date. So now that we have this, so let's go ahead and let's create an example content using this new recurring event. Okay, so let's do that. We can do the same thing actually. We can do story time with Humble Bumblebee. We can do, like this is story time every Sunday. This is just a description. You can add anything there. And as you can see, it looks the same. This is the field that we added, the story events field. It also has the option to show an end date, which we won't do. And we can choose, let's say, I said every Sunday. So we're going to choose, the first one would be the 5th. And then here is the option to repeat the event. As you click down, you'll see that it has repeats. You can choose daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. And it could repeat every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week. So I'm just going to say it's going to repeat every 2 weeks. I'm going to select Sunday. I'm going to have it recur. Let's say I want it to recur 10 times, 10 repeats. And then, or you can have the option to pick a specific date, but you have to pick one or the other. So I'm just going to do 10 occurrences. You can also have the option to exclude the dates that fall within this repeat criteria here. And if you click on that, you have the option to enter a date and add the exception. And let's say we have a date that the event one day, it's not going to happen on a Sunday, it's going to happen on a Saturday. We can include a Saturday date instead of a Sunday date. Let's say 1 week it's going to happen on a Saturday, so I'm going to enter that on a Saturday. I'm going to add exception, and then you have the option of adding more. Okay, so now I'm going to save it. Okay, and you can see here, it's only showing the repeat every two, it shows the repeat rule, and it shows the first date that I've picked. But this also has a manage display function that we can also set to show, to set how many dates we want to show. So we'll go and we'll look at that next. So let's go to our recurring event. It should have, if we look at the manage display, and if we go back to our store event state, it will show the multiple values, and you can also choose now, and you can also choose to hide the rule. So that's it's very similar to the other way as well. Okay, so now the next thing that we're going to talk about is
just one minute, Shanti. I think I had there is a question. If it is related to this, let's clear that. There's a question from Sunny. So she's asked, did I hear correct that the recurring events will not show up in the events calendar? Sunny, yes. The first option that Shanti showed, where you are taking an existing event content type and just making the event date as unlimited, that one will show up on the events calendar. But the latest one that Shanti just demonstrated, where you're creating a new content type and using that for repeating events, that will not show up on the regular calendar, because the regular calendar usually only pulls data from event content type. Since this is a different content type, it's not going to pull it into the regular calendar. So you will have to create a new calendar to pull these into it.
Yeah, it does not.
Okay.
The event that was created will not show up on this calendar, and it will not show up on the current upcoming events either.
Okay. So now let's move on to the next topic, which is creating RSVP for events.
Okay, so I'm going to go here. So the event RSVP, we're going to do it for the event content type, and we're going to do the RSVP form, which is a new field that we will add to the event content type. So the first step is to create an RSVP form field for our event content type. Now we'll create one web form. You have to create the RSVP web form, and you should create one web form for each event you wish to get RSVP. And then we'll configure the web form, and then we'll enable the RSVP form for the right event, for the event that we'll be doing. Okay, so now we're going to go back to add the form field to our content type. So we're going to go to Structure, Content Types, Event, Manage Fields. So now we have to add a new field, and we'll call that the RSVP form. We'll just call it new. And for this, the field type is entity reference, and the widget is select list. And then we're going to save. Okay, so here the only thing we need to do is we need to select the web form option here. and then we'll save the field settings. And now we're taken to another page, and we'll see down here, we just want to check to make sure the number of values is 1. And then we're all set with that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select the Manage Display. So we're going to go back up, and we're going to go back to our event. We're going to go to Manage Display. We'll find the form that we've just created, and we want to change the format to rendered entity. And we're going to save that. And then we want to also go on this little gear here, and we don't want to show the link, and we're going to save.
So what Shanti is doing here is the concept is still the same. All you're doing is you're creating a web form. You're using web form. Web forms are there on IndieCommerce sites. So you're creating a web form to accept RSVP, and you're attaching that web form to the event that you want the RSVP for. So that's basically what we are doing, but we are also editing the event content type so that this can be used for any event.
Okay, so now that we've added the field to our event content type so that we can attach a particular web form to it, we're going to create our web form now. So the path to do that is Content, and then you'll see web form. Actually, it's Content, Add Content. Well, this is a list of our web forms. Content, Add Content, actual web form. That's the actual path to it. And we will be doing a web form for the Delia Owens book. So it's author event. Oops. It's author event with Delia Owens RSVP. So we can enter, please RSVP. And we will just save it for now. And now we can add our components. So here's where we will add the name. We'll say, let's say the full name. The full name will be a text field. And then we'll make the name mandatory. So we'll do that and click Add. And then when we come down here, the only thing we need to do here actually is we'll just save it at the bottom. And then the next one would be your email. And the email, you can choose the email type. We'll also make email mandatory, and we'll add that. And then all you have to do right now is just save it. And we'll do one more, and we will do number of guests, let's say. And then we can pick number. We don't need to make this mandatory. We'll just add. And then we will go down and we will save. We can also change it to a select list actually if we wanted to. If we did that, we would have to set a minimum. I would say minimum is 0 and maximum is 10. So we'll come back. So let's say we select list for display, and then we're going to save the component. Okay, so now we want to set the email settings for our RSVP. So this is where who's going to receive this email when a customer or responds and fills out the form, fills out the RSVP. So what we're going to do here is it's going to go to my email address, or in your case, the store email address, and click on Add. Now here for email to address, you can keep that the same, and you can keep the email subject the same as well. But for the email from address, we'll select component. This will keep it on the the email from the customer's email in case you want to respond to the email that you received, the notice that a store staff receives. And the same thing, you want to keep the name, the full name of the component, which is the name that the customer will enter. And then you'll keep the default template, everything is the same, and you will save email settings. And the next thing you want to set up for this web form is the form settings. Now this is the confirmation message. You can say thank you for your interest, or thank you for RSVPing. And then we do not want it to go to a confirmation page to redirect it to a different page. We want to select no redirect. So this way, when the customer enters it, the form, they'll remain on the same page. It doesn't take them to another page. And we scroll all the way down, we keep everything the same, and you'll see the advanced settings here. You want the submit button text. You can just change that to RSVP and you would save the configuration. Okay, so now that we did all that, let's go take a look at what it looks like. And here's our RSVP. And you have the option of selecting, adding 10 guests when you RSVP. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our event content type. And we don't need to go back there. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our event, and then we're going to attach this to our event. So I'm going to go back. So I have the author event down here in the right-hand corner link. So I'm going to do that. So I am going to go to edit. And I am going to scroll all the way down. I should see a field for adding the form. And here it is, the RSVP form. And then I'm going to select all of the available. When I click on the button under the form, I'll see all the available web forms. And I want to pick the correct one, which is author event with Delia Owens. So I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to save. Now, once I do that, it'll take me back to the event page, and you'll see that the form is attached. Now, the only thing left to do for us is actually fill out the form. So I'm going to fill out the form. Let's say I'm going to choose a different email. And I'm going to bring 2 people. I'm going to say RSVP. And you see, once you see whether there's a message up here, that was the confirmation message that we added in the form settings field, that little message there. And if I had selected to not redirect, it would go to a separate page which will only display this message. But I wanted to keep it on the author events page. And then the customer can come in and they can order books or something like that too. And I should receive an email with this RSVP into my email field as well. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to take a look at the web form settings just a little bit to see how you can keep track of the submissions. So if I go to content web forms, and you saw this briefly earlier, you'll see of all the web forms, this particular web form, you can check the submissions here. And it's only 1 submission so far. And even here, you can click on view to see the entry. And you can see who it was entered by, when, what time, the fields that were selected. And it also has a link back to the event that this form was attached to. Okay, so we'll go back to the web form results. And also you are able to download this web form if you want to as well. If you click on download, there's an option to download into Microsoft Excel or just a text file. And you can choose any one of these that you want. And then if you click on download, it should automatically download. As you can see here, it's downloaded. And of course, if I click on my Excel sheet, I'll see that this should be one. And it gives you all the fields, the username, the full name, the email, the number of guests.
Yeah, this can come in handy if you are already not using another service for RSVP and for events. And this can come in handy. This can be something that you can create easily on your website, just using web forms. You may not use it for all events, but maybe for certain events, this may come in handy and an easy solution. And also, if you go to the web form, Shanti, can you briefly go to the web form that we created for the event? And since we enable the option to clone content, you can see that the clone content appears on any type of content that you are creating. So that's actually a good thing to have too, but you have to be careful when you clone content. Make sure that you are cloning the right type of content and you're editing the content to make sure that you don't have two content exactly the same. But let's say you're using this feature for creating RSVP, then once you create one web form, you can just clone it and then create for another event. So that makes it even easier for you to create multiple RSVP forms. Okay, there are a couple of questions, so let's quickly take a look at that.
Okay.
So the first question, will you program the recurring event content type to be able to show up on the calendar? This would be helpful. So I believe you are, Samantha, you're referring to the option where we create a new content type. Yes, we can look into it. But the thing is, because it's two different content types, it makes it a little difficult. But we'll definitely take a look at it. And also for stores that are just starting new, and if you don't have any events on your site or maybe a few events, then you could try going with the creating the new content type and using that for everything for events. And still, we still have to create that new calendar. In that case, everything will appear on that new calendar that we create. So that is an option for someone who is just starting new.
And here's an example of the solution, the other solution. As you can see, this Friday night book does not exist on the current calendar here. So you'll have two separate calendars unless you want to somehow just keep, if you're a new store, like Geeta said, and you just want to use that one calendar moving forward.
Okay, the next one is about the event RSVP. Is there a way to limit the number of attendees? It's not going to stop them from sending an RSVP, but since someone is receiving the emails at the store, that may be the way to control a number of people that are attending. But if you want to have a real check on the number of people who are submitting the RSVP, I think the other approach is to create a dummy product, a custom product called RSVP, and then attach it to the event. It'll be like a custom product. They just click on RSVP, and you can have, again, the only reason we went with the web form approach is because it feels more like they're submitting a form and they still remain on the events page. The other solution that some stores have used where they want to control the number of people attending is to go with a custom product and then control it with stock. But again, customers have to go through checkout in order to submit an RSVP, which is not the general experience that customers would want. So with this approach, there is no automatic way for controlling the attendees. Someone who receives the email should keep track of that. And then when they've reached the number, then they just have to disable that web form.
And you can also have a sort of text or message on the web form itself telling customers that although they are RSVP.
Shanti, I think there's some disturbance on the other end.
Can you hear it now?
Still, no, there is still a disturbance.
Huh. Is that for sure okay? Or now?
No. Okay, let me just go through the other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you need to make an RSVP form for each event, or can you make a master RSVP web form that you can attach to multiple events? I think because when someone submits an RSVP, you want to know which event they are attending. So I think it would be good to have one for each individual event. Let's say you have 3 events happening and they want to RSVP. You can use the same form for multiple events. Let's say you want to have a master RSVP form and attach it to all the events. Then in that case, in that web form, you have to add a drop down where they will select the event for which they are RSVPing. I think that is possible. That way you can have one form, but then you'll have a drop down. They will select which event they're RSVPing for, and then they'll submit the form, and you can attach that web RSVP form to all the events that you want to receive the RSVP for. I think that might work, yes. Is there a way to add to calendar button like we saw on our webinar confirmation? Add to calendar button like we saw on our webinar on confirmation email. I think I will need a little more explanation on that. So I think it was Stacy. Stacy, if I unmute you, will you be able to explain that question to us? And you're unmuted now if you want to speak.
Like on our the confirmation email that we got when we signed up for this, there was a button that said that you could add to your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar.
Oh, and I see.
I was wondering if there was a way to do that for our events.
I'll have to take a look at that. We'll take a look at that. We don't have that right now, but we can look into it. Do you use any other third party for events like Eventbrite or Brown Paper Tickets or anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, we'll take a look. I believe those services have it, but we can see if we can reproduce that on our end. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so what else do we have next? What do you recommend I use for recurring book club meetings that need a different book for each recurring meeting? Okay, so if you have a recurring book club meeting with different books for each, I think the best option for you would be to use the clone. The let me just Samantha. Samantha, I'm going to unmute you so that we can see. Okay, so I think the best solution would be to do a node clone, because the last 2 options we talked about, you cannot change the book per event. So I think the best option would be to do the node clone content. So you get a new copy of this event. You can keep the rest same, you'll change the date, and then you change the book. You delete the book from the clone, and then you add your new book.
Okay,
does that make sense?
It does, thank you. How do I get the clone content?
Yes, we can enable, just send us a request, and it's we have to enable it for websites, because this is like it is a very cool feature, but at the same time, we are worried that some stores may misuse it and then start cloning all the content, and they'll have a whole ton of content that they don't need. So we don't enable it by default, but definitely please write to staff at BookWeb and we will have it enabled on your site.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, I think that is it. I think this was a wonderful presentation, Chanti. Thank you. And so we went over 4 different options for recurring events. I know there are pros and cons in both. And if you have any questions about it, please write to us. And this is being recorded, and the PowerPoint that went with this also will be available for all the attendees. We will email it out in a couple of days. And if none of this works for you, and if you have a different unique use case, let us know. We can always look into other solutions. And also the RSVP, give it a try. And if you need help with creating web forms or on how to attach it to the event, again, let us know. Please don't hesitate to write to staff@bookweb.org. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And you will find information about any future presentations or demos in the Indie Communication or in Bookselling this week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.